You're not going to, I mean, if you want your mind changed by Ben Shapiro, go ahead, but he's not going to say anything that's unbiased. So it's just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, I would agree with diversifying your information. And like I said earlier, specific questions is a good way to really dig into information, so that you're not reading one person's account. You're like kind of seeing how several people are addressing the same topic.
Right.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Undoctrination. I'm Maggie.
And I'm Olivia.
And this week, we're opening a can of worms. Yay!
Yay!
It's not like we've been avoiding this episode.
I know. I mean, I've been so excited for the whole past month to talk about something horrible and awful and to get a bunch of crazy comments. So today, we're just going to display our expertise as foreign policy experts, as two Gen Z Zoomers.
You know, I've been studying Israel and Palestine for the past 5 decades, and I have to say that I know exactly what I'm talking about. No, you guys, we're not doing that, okay? There's too much of that happening, and I understand that everyone feels very intensely about this conflict. We'll get into that part. But as for me, I just don't feel qualified to give you the opinion you should have about this conflict. And I think Olivia probably feels pretty similarly. I am not in the dark about what's going on, but I would say that it's such a tough situation and war is always like that I don't feel qualified to really tell you what to think. So, yeah.
And that's perfectly
Hopefully that's okay. Hopefully that's okay with you guys.
And that's not to say that neither of us have any opinions, because privately we've talked and shared what our personal beliefs are on the issue. But in this age of polarization to the point where, I mean, this is the most radical issue I've seen in my time. This is more radical than Black Lives Matter, at least to me, because we're seeing these massive protests in all of the Western countries. I mean, throughout the entire world, on both sides of the issue, both Palestine and Israel. And it's just like, I don't want to get doxxed. I don't want to get threatened. I don't want to fight people. I want to provide something helpful to the situation. And you know what's not helpful in achieving like a 2-state solution at this point? My opinion. It's not going to change anything.
Literally, yes. the leaders like in Israel and in Gaza are not listening to Undoctrination, waiting to hear what our solutions are.
Maybe everybody would sing Kumbaya if they did. But what we are going to talk about instead is related to this issue, but it's more about the discourse surrounding it. We're talking about it in academia, the protests we've seen. We're going to talk about the response from politicians, because there's been several new bills for aid, for speech. And there's been a lot of nasty things that people completely unrelated to the issue in the West, in America, they're doing to Jewish people, Muslim people, just anyone that they see on the opposite side of the issue. So that's what we're going to talk about.
It's so intense. We're going to talk a lot about free speech and how it relates to this conflict, because I think especially with what's been happening on campuses, there is such a vast gap of understanding about what exactly qualifies as free speech and what doesn't, right? And so people are acting crazy and doing crazy things that actually don't qualify as free speech. That's rare that within protests you have people that are genuinely hurting each other or like threatening each other, but that's happening currently. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say I have been praying a lot about this situation. There is a reason it's so tense and so controversial, and that's because there are thousands of innocent people dying in this conflict. And I think that's what makes, one, both sides so animated about it, but it also makes it really hard from like a third party observation point to really know what exactly is going on. Or what exactly to think. And there's a lot of people losing loved ones And I know people who know people that like were hurt in the original Hamas attack or are now being deployed within the IDF. We also know Justin Amash, or we don't know Justin Amash, but we have
Justin
a lot
Amash
of
is a
respect
friend
for
of
Justin
FEE
Amash.
and the Liberty Movement.
And several of his relatives, including 2 very young women in his family, died
and a baby
in Gaza after a bombing. And yeah, like I said, it's a very, very intense issue. And that's part of the reason I don't feel like I can come on here and tell you what to think. And you shouldn't let other people tell you what to think. That's the first thing I want to get at too. The bullying has got to stop, okay? When I first spoke about the terrorist attacks that happened in Israel on October 7th, I got doxxed and received my first genuine death threat. Like, it was insane. And literally, the tweet that led to my doxing,
it was so mundane, guys.
It was so mundane. I was like,
mundane.
I'm praying for the people in Israel who are suffering right now. And like, boom, dox,
how dare
death
you?
Threat, how dare you? That's kind of just how the discourse has been. It's you have to spout the exact same viewpoint I do, or else you are the worst kind of person on the planet and you want people to die. And therefore, you know, any threat I make against you is completely fine. That's not acceptable, in my opinion.
And it's absolutely not. And I think Twitter /X out of all the social media platforms is most notorious for people completely seeing what they want to see when you tweet something. So they take it out of context or they just completely rewrite the entire meaning. And so they did that with your post, you know, praying for Israelis who, mind you guys, she posted this like directly after the Hamas attacks on October 7th. So this is not her just like sitting on her high horse like months later. Like this is happening in real time. People in the Jewish community are like hurting in real time. And then a few days after that, I said something along the lines of, if your cause is utilizing the mass rape and killing of innocent women, children, and civilians, then you're not doing something right. Then that is terrorism. And a bunch of people who I think follow me, because I have been active in anti-war spaces, they quote tweeted me talking about, well, where were you when Israel did this, that, and that, and that? And I said, please go to my profile and search the word Israel. You will find that I don't have strong positive feelings towards Israel before this movement happened. So it's weird that people just see anything that is sympathizing with victims, if they're Israeli or Jewish, they take it to mean like you hate Palestinians or you hate Muslim people.
Basic empathy that we should all employ. And by the way, we are on the other side of the world. We're not in the ears of politicians and the leaders of terrorist groups over there. So, like, it's okay for us to express basic empathy for other human beings who are losing their loved ones or their own lives. Like that is atrocious. It's horrible. Like that, I think, is the best place to start first with this discourse, is just basic empathy and caring about other people. I really didn't think that was so difficult. And yet, the discourse has been so animated. And I really do feel pretty bad for anyone who is being personally affected by this. I, as you guys probably know, like, am very integrated within the Jewish community in Atlanta. It is seriously, seriously impacted Jewish people in America. And I literally live in a neighborhood that's heavily Jewish. There has been a high police presence in my neighborhood every single day since. Like, it is very scary times. There's been a lot of violence happening at protests. We can kind of jump into it. This 69-year-old Jewish man was showing his support for Israel at a pro-Palestinian demonstration, got into an altercation with someone on the other side who then, I guess, hit him, and he died because of a head injury.
But the headlines were all like, old Jewish man dies at protest. They didn't say it got killed. Even though the medical examiner ruled it as a homicidal blow to the head, whatever trauma happened to his head. We don't know. I don't think at this time there was reports of him getting hit over the head or him falling and busting his head on the ground. So either way, it was instigated by this guy who was mad that this man decided to show his free speech. I believe he was waving an Israel flag. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Is he causing controversy by showing up to a Palestinian rally holding an Israel flag? But that's protected free speech. And we have completely like gone away from what is free speech, what is protected free speech, and what is a call for violence. Because we're seeing calls for violence by Hamas sympathizers that I've seen. They're talking about just completely from the river to the sea, dismantling Israel, and oftentimes that includes the genocide of millions of Jewish people and Israelis. So we have that rhetoric happening, but that's not what's really getting criticized. We have people sitting in Congress saying that. We had Rashida Tlaib sitting in Congress calling on Biden to call for a ceasefire. And in that video, she said, from the river to the sea. And I know that there's a complicated background on the history of that phrase, but when you actually look at the history, it is used by Hamas sympathizers. And I think that not everybody who uses it is calling for violence and genocide.
I think people don't realize what they're saying.
Right,
when they
but
say
you can't be surprised if that's what you get conflated with. If Hamas is screaming that thing and you're also screaming that thing, maybe don't scream that thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and I do think people just don't understand how alive anti-Semitism is. I think we do recognize that Islamophobia is alive and well because we've lived in it, right? Post 9/11, Islamophobia was really, really bad in the US. We went to war over there. I think a lot of us are reliving those memories of going to war post 9/11. And so the big anti-war contingent is like, all right, slow down, you know? But anti-Semitism I've noticed it. It's been growing like a weed, okay? And especially since this conflict erupted, I have seen white girls in videos of these protests saying that, like, justifying Hamas's attack.
They're tearing down pictures and posters of small little babies and innocent children who were kidnapped by Hamas. They did that at my apartment.
Like, literally, there was a poster at my apartment. The next day, gone. Like, I don't know what to say. It's Israeli
propaganda. I agree. There is a lot of propaganda coming out of Israel. There's also a lot of propaganda coming out of Hamas. What you're not allowed to do is vandalize or destroy somebody else's right to free speech. You're allowed to share propaganda. I'm sorry. That's protected free speech as well.
You cannot vandalize property. The posters are protected, I think. But
if it's on a public street, then I understand that there's not somebody claiming ownership of the poster. It's still just such a bad look to be. I mean, there's so much propaganda that you see on a daily basis on TV, on the radio. Anytime you see a vote blue, no matter who sign, that is propaganda. But you don't see a lot of Republicans going down. I mean, I'm sure it happens, but I don't think you see a lot of conservatives ripping down Democrat propaganda, or even a lot of moderate Democrats. They don't rip down a lot of, I guess I would say, conservative propaganda. People will take pictures and mock it, but this is so radicalized.
We have a sense of decorum about things most of the time. Most of the time we have some decorum. But I mean, I say for some reason, there's a reason people are so emotionally charged, and it's because people are dying. Understood. Can we take a step back and maybe not immediately hop into a camp of let's justify the murder of people on the other side, or even blatantly call for that? And then, like, the ripping down of posters, what exactly is the aim of this? The posters are up so that people understand the weight of all of these children and men and women who have been kidnapped by Hamas, right? Yeah. That's so people can empathize and understand. It's not a call to take up arms, right? It's just giving information. What is wrong with that? I don't understand. But
there's a lot wrong.
Also, there's this massive double standard happening in universities where professors are making these wild statements about Jewish people, and it just like swept under the rug. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. When if that was any other historically oppressed group, the professor would be gone. But it seems that we have this double standard against Jewish people. I'm sorry, rant over. Clearly, I care a lot about that because it impacts people that I care about and love very, very deeply. Like a lot of people I know are scared, and I know people on social media like to mock that and think it's ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. It's real life, you know? Like it's genuine. These like the violent outbursts have mostly, from what I understand, been happening against Jewish people here. However, there was a Palestinian girl killed, right?
There was a 6-year-old boy in Illinois, I believe, who was killed by his elderly neighbor, and police do believe it was fueled as a hate crime, like motivated by the attacks. Now, I don't know if the neighbor was Jewish or had any connections to Israel, but he took it out knowing the boy was Muslim.
Probably not. Another thing to understand is there are like certain camps that like automatically filter into different sides. So Protestants kind of automatically filter into supporting Israel. They've been
evangelicals love that, baby.
Yeah, they do.
They love that.
Do. And I do think it's like part of it. It's partially a religious thing. But yeah, I mean, like, despite what's happening overseas and how many people are dying there, why are we bringing it to America?
Well, we've imported half of the Middle East, first of all. We do have, I mean, not that Jews make up a significant portion of literally any global population besides Israel, but we do have, a semi-significant portion of Jewish people here. They might be like, 2% of the population. Mm-hmm. And I know it's controversial to say, but they are very, very, I will say very well represented in the media. So we do hear a lot of Jewish voices warning us and talking about it. Amy Schumer came under fire. I didn't know she was Jewish, to be honest, until like this whole thing came out. But a lot of celebrities, namely Jewish celebrities, have been getting a lot of hate because they're openly Zionist and have
they have been getting
announced
a lot of hate
that lately.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Regina Spektor, who's like one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time. She's Jewish and openly Zionist, and she said something about it. And just the vitriolic response from teenage girls online, not understanding why she feels the way she feels. Like, I know Gigi Hadid has been like championing the pro-Palestine cause, but she's not getting backlash from what I see.
I definitely saw some people. I mean, I would say one side tends to spam Instagram comments a lot more than the other side. Yeah. I did see her get backlash. I don't know if you're like in the makeup community at all. Huda Beauty, who I believe is Muslim, and she's definitely of Middle Eastern descent. She made her statement clear, and she got a lot of hate from Jewish people about it. Like they're trying to boycott her products and stuff like that. And she just said, keep your blood money anyways. I don't want it. Basically in response to people saying that you're supporting a genocide. Well, Jewish people said she's supporting a genocide and da-da-da-da-da. And she said, keep your blood money anyways.
Goodness gracious.
So there's a lot going on.
Have you seen what they're saying about Taylor Swift? Her silence is violence. Oh, okay. So this is actually what I wanted to bring up. We love Salome on the show, guys. We love Salome. Yes.
Sibanix. She's I would describe her as a philosopher and artist, and it may sound like BS to call like this young, beautiful woman a philosopher because you think of like an old, ugly fart
she's so
from like
smart.
ancient Rome or something, but she's smart.
She's smart and she's gorgeous. We love
just
it.
the total package.
Go follow her.
She said, I think what just wrap that whole point in a bow about begging celebrities or begging anybody with a platform really to speak on what you want them to speak on. She tweeted, I am not a platform. You are not entitled to dictate what my words and actions serve. You are not my king, my God, or my mom. The anger and disappointment you feel towards me for not being you is your lack of respect for my autonomy and individuality. No cause is so righteous it could grant you my freedom. And this is in response to a lot of those people saying, you know, this is the equivalent of like, post the black square if you care about Black Lives Matter. Oh my God, I never posted that. And people literally unfollowed me for it. And it's kind of the same thing now.
Olivia, you're joking.
There was these two girls I went to high school with who literally like told me my silence was damning. Yeah, I know. I know. I clearly don't care about Black people.
People were bored during COVID and had nothing better to do.
Bored.
But we have too much to do to bully other people into supporting our causes now. We're too busy. So I would like to know why Taylor Swift needs to make a statement. And more importantly, why does she need to make the statement that you want to hear? Kind of my whole point about all of this is that it's a very complex topic. There is a lot to read and understand and a lot of information to gather and a lot of propaganda to sift through. Like, it's hard, okay, to actually form an opinion that is not heavily influenced by your in-group. That is what I've been seeing a lot. It's like the in-group pressure to conform to their opinion, but not just conform to their opinion, but demonize the other side and completely write them off. Like, that is a problem I have. And the people calling on Taylor Swift to speak up are not asking her to just make a statement. They're asking her to make a pro-Palestine statement. And like go full Monty with it, because these same people, when Selena Gomez came out and essentially said, I don't want to see anyone die. She's been the it girl, y'all. I don't know if you pay attention to pop culture, but Selena Gomez has been the it girl for the past year, and she's done. She's done because she said a normal thing about this conflict. We can't have normal opinions, by the way.
No,
that's not acceptable.
And they call you a centrist, and they say it's a really lazy argument because you're against people dying on both sides. You have to dehumanize Palestinians, or you have to dehumanize Israelis, and be for one or the other being completely wiped out off the map if you want any respect from these people. And I don't want any respect from these people. I couldn't care less. So I'm not going to say what they want me to say. And it's interesting that you brought up like there's so much pressure from the in-group, because as somebody who I feel like I'm completely outside any groups that have an overwhelming opinion. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Muslim. I have a couple Jewish friends and I have a couple Muslim friends, but not to the point where I'm like having like heart-to-heart conversations with them about this, because a lot of them don't care either. Like, they're American. I don't think I know any Israelis or Palestinians that are like close to me that are my friends. And then within like, I guess my political camp, which is I'm not a member of a political party, so I don't feel pressure to feel one way or the other. So my opinion, which again, I'm not going to tell you guys how to think or even share too much about my own personal opinion, because I don't want that smoke of sharing my opinion and getting all this backlash for it, because I'm not going to change my opinion, and I'm not going to change y'all's opinion if I share mine. But I will say that it's super important to follow a lot of people and go to a lot of different news sources that may be across the aisle or spectrum from each other, because already my Twitter following is super diverse. And then I didn't really know everyone's opinions on Zionism or the Israeli-Palestinian conflict until October 7th happened. Now I know everybody's opinion. It's about 50-50. Like my following list is about 50-50, which I really love, because I feel like I'm seeing both sides propaganda, I'm seeing both sides facts, and I'm seeing in the middle the true facts, the truth.
But Olivia, have you noticed that the sides are operating with a completely different set of talking points?
I've seen differences, but I've also seen a lot of similarities. So one thing that, Ben Shapiro has been getting a lot of flack, and he's one of the largest Jewish voices on the internet of all time. And he had this tweet from...
He should be pro-Israel. I'm sorry. For the Palestinian people, I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. But like people that are personally affected, it's like, yeah, do your thing.
I understand that, but just to use his rhetoric, for example, he has been come under fire for years over his rhetoric towards Arabs, specifically Palestinians. And I remember when that one tweet from, I believe it's from like 2012, like it's literally over 10 years old.
What did he say?
He said that Israelis build cities and Arabs live in filth and sewage. And it was, it's pretty racist, right? But I find that to be a really common theme among the most radical Israeli supporters, is that Arabs are just filth and they're just beasts and they're just animals and we should just glass Gaza. And I had to unfollow people. I know I told you guys about 50% of my following is pro-Israel, 50% is pro-Palestine or just anti-war in general. And I did have to unfollow a couple people, but the only people I unfollowed was people who were dehumanizing and calling people animals and subhuman. And I will say the only people I had to unfollow for that reason were on the Israeli side. And that's just a sample size of like
Really?
the 1,400 people I follow. Yeah, because a lot of my pro-Palestinian people that I follow, they're pro-Palestinian, not because they're Palestinian or Muslim or Middle Eastern or Arab, but because they're anti-war and anti-imperialism. Yeah. So that's like the reason. So it's not for any like racial reasons. Mm-hmm. I will say I was shocked to find out that certain people are like actually just racist against Arabs.
I mean, don't name any names on the podcast, but we got to talk after.
Yeah, but like that Ben Shapiro tweet where he says that that's Arabs live in filth and sewage, and that's an old tweet, mind you, but I find that that's a common...
I wonder if he's like addressed it recently. That would be interesting.
I will try to search for it, but I did like find people agreeing with it.
Yeah, I feel like when you're in an in-group for too long and not exposed to other people's opinions, it leads to that level of radicalization. And I think that's one of the biggest things everyone should avoid. Maybe don't expose yourself to the crazies on this issue, but try to like go dig for yourself. That was the big piece of advice I wanted to give. I would say Twitter's great and everything, but it's not that great for information. Like there, you will find so much stuff that people just made up. Like, you're like scrolling and you're like, you just made that up. Like that's wrong. Twitter's not a citable source unless you're pulling a tweet that you think is phrased nicely like we just did, or you want to pull up a tweet to like make fun of or something. It's not a citable source. Go to Google and Google specific questions and read several sources on those specific questions. So you can read your primers, right, about Israel and Palestine and watch as many videos as you want and read books on it. But really, the debate gets down to very specific questions that people have disputes over. So I would say that's the best way to do your research. Don't rely on ideologues to tell you what to think.
But Maggie, what am I supposed to think if I don't have my talking points from Ben Shapiro?
Dude, I don't know. Opt out. Take a step back, leave the conversation table or listen, observe. I've been doing a lot of that, the listening and observing. I find myself really, really getting incensed about like the justifications that people try to make, and like the really violent threats people are making, which by the way, the free speech issue, you're allowed to really have whatever opinion you want on Israel and Palestine. And that can be unfortunate for people. Like there are several college campuses where students for justice in Palestine are holding these insane rallies. And a lot of Jewish students on campus have said that makes them feel unsafe because of specific things that are being said at those rallies. But the answer is not to just like kick the protests off of campus, right? Like that would be a violation of freedom of speech. However, if there is an individual making threats, that's not free speech. That does not fall under the realm of free speech. And that actually can be addressed by the university. And violence, obviously. Anything related to violence, if they're hitting you or telling you that they're going to kill you, doesn't apply. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to live with people's awful opinions that are scary, you know?
Right.
And it's not a fun thing. Like, I am so glad I am not an Israeli or Palestinian student on a college campus right now. I'll just say that.
That
sounds
I am thankful
awful.
for.
That sounds awful because people automatically rope you in with the conflict and think they can take their anger out on you. And that's unacceptable. I know that you had pulled some stuff that was happening between politicians.
Yeah. So there's a lot happening. So just to go back to the free speech on college campuses issue, House Resolution 798, introduced by Representative Burgess Owens, a Republican, declared the support of Hamas and Hezbollah on campuses as they may lead to the creation of a hostile environment for Jewish students, faculty, and staff. This measure calls on university administrators to condemn the rising Jewish hatred on their campuses and to ensure the Jewish faculty and students and staff can, exercise their free speech without intimidation. It's just a little bit vaguely worded. And so
I don't know what it means.
Yeah. So, in a statement following the bill's approval, because it was approved by a very large margin, it is the height of hypocrisy that the same colleges advocating for DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, are silent as hateful acts of anti-Semitism spread like wildfire on their campuses. The failure to promptly condemn these demonstrations glorifying terrorism is shameful and beyond moral reproach, and has left Jewish students feeling fearful for their lives. Today, the People's House sent a clear message to the nation. We firmly reject evil. We strongly support Israel. It will root out the rotten ideologies found in our higher education system. I just find that wrong just because it's like, it's not, I know you're saying it's the People's House and it's very nice and it sounds very American and constitutionalist and conservative to call it the People's House. Congress is the People's House. No, because I'm sorry, the people, especially because it's targeting college campuses, the people on college campuses who you are targeting, they do not feel represented by you strongly supporting Israel. I'm sorry. They should be allowed to say it. And they should be allowed to make people feel uncomfortable if that doesn't encroach on their rights. I should be able to say something that makes, when we talk about like the trans rights issue, when Sarah Higdon comes on and we talk about should children be able to transition, I'm sure that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I'm sure that makes certain transsexual people uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean it's violent speech, and that doesn't mean it should be have a formal measure about it in Congress. So 23 representatives voted against it. It was mostly squad members. And can you guess the one Republican who voted against the anti-Semitism on campus bill?
Who was it?
It was Sir Thomas Massey, my favorite person in Congress.
That sounds pretty consistent. Yeah.
It sounds consistent. He said, he tweeted on X, or he posted on X, whatever they call it now. Free speech means protecting speech you don't like, not just speech you do like. Also, who defines anti-Semitism? And that's what he said on that.
Yeah, I mean, fair. Like, again, I would hate to be a Jewish student on a college campus right now. Just putting that out there. That would suck a lot. But at the same time, if people are not making violent threats, you can't censor that other person, even if their ideology is horrendous, hateful, like you feel uncomfortable around them. Like, unfortunately, you can't censor them. The one positive thing you should take out of knowing that you can't censor them is that you know exactly who they are. They are all showing their true colors right now. And you can just, nope, not going near that person. And that's kind of one of the more valuable parts of freedom of speech, is that you quickly find out exactly what other people think.
This is going to be, it's not my opinion, it's a controversial opinion, but can I challenge you to stick by that for 1 second? Because this is a horrible opinion that I find abhorrent. Okay. Let me preface. Cornell professor, this is a couple weeks ago, like towards the end of October. So a couple weeks after the Hamas attacks, he came under fire for calling the October 7th Hamas attacks on Israel. And this is at an off-campus but student-led pro-Palestinian rally, okay? He called the attacks on Israel, quote, exhilarating and energizing. And this is a professor of history, Russell Rickford at Cornell University. He has since been placed on leave. And he, if you guys watch the video, but it's on Twitter, it went viral, and he has since apologized, but he said this attack was energizing, it was exhilarating, and you're not even human if you weren't exhilarated by that. You have no humanity. So he was placed on leave. Is that a call for violence or is that free speech?
He did not explicitly call for violence. He didn't, but the university is employing him. They don't have to employ him. I do think he's got to go.
I think he has to go.
I think that's an endorsement of violence. I think that is a heavy endorsement. And honestly, I think it's good when these people who harbor these feelings tell other people that they harbor these feelings, because then we don't have like crypto raging anti-Semites like hanging out in the history
It's like, say what you really mean.
You know?
Say what you really mean. It really energized you to see Jews get murdered. Thank you for putting that on the table. Thank you for saying it was exhilarating. Now we know
that
really
you suck and no one should talk to you.
Right. And it seems like a very common theme at all these very prestigious and Ivy League schools, because we've seen very similar reports coming out of students and professors from Cornell, Columbia, Harvard.
It is so common. Olivia, I'm telling you, they're all unleashing. It's been like festering for years, and I've talked about it, and people have called me crazy. Okay. You know this, like when Kanye came out and was saying crazy stuff about Hitler, I was like, I'm a little worried, because there were a lot of people supporting exactly what he said online, right? And I was like, that's concerning. Like that right there is concerning. I'm concerned that this is becoming a more popular thing again. And there's this theory that history repeats every 80 years because people forget the consequences of what happened 80 years ago. The people that were alive are now gone, or they're very, very old. And so the generation that really remembers what happened isn't there to inform people, right? So our living memory as a society kind of goes away. And I do think that that's kind of, we're approaching that point again. And it's crazy. It's mind-boggling. But I do think that motivates a lot of these more nefarious people within the pro-Palestine side. I don't think it motivates all of the pro-Palestinian people. Like I know so many anti-war people that are very pro-Palestine simply because they do not want war. Like that is their position. But at the same time, a lot of times in order to justify violence, people dehumanize the other side. And I've seen that mentality spreading. There was this video of these two girls at a pro-Palestine rally who are like endorsing the terrorist attack. And they're just normie American girls.
These normie girls who saw one infographic and now they think that they saw one TikTok and maybe an infographic, and they think they have the authority to declare Hamas as not a terrorist organization. I'm sorry, even if you are on the pro-Palestine side or if you sympathize with a lot of Palestinians, you should be able to just admit that. Just admit it, because I would take your argument, and so many other people would take your argument a lot more seriously. And let me tell you, without sharing too much, I already do sympathize a lot with your arguments. But when you say stuff like that, or when you're tearing down posters of missing babies and stuff, you act like the animals that Islamophobes think you are. And you don't have to be Muslim. I mean, these are American white girls frequently who are on college campuses.
Girl in the video is blonde. I'm like,
pulling down the posters. And it's like, you know that there are people out here who are genuinely racist against Palestinians and Arabs, calling them all types of names. And you're out here trying to confirm that, or what? I mean, it requires human empathy. and just humanity to feel something for a child on the other side of the issue, on the other side of the aisle. And when you display that you don't have any empathy for a Jewish child or an Israeli child or a Palestinian child or a Muslim child, you do act like an animal. And you're kind of playing into that whole role that whatever other side has put onto you that's dehumanizing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any, like right before we wrap up, do you have any advice for maybe people that are younger or older? I feel like so many people like don't know what to think about this conflict. How would you advise people to progress forward? Because this is only going to get worse, I think. It's going to start involving discussions about foreign aid and should we get involved and all of those things. So the conversation's not going away. You can't necessarily avoid it. Maybe not within your like friends and family, although my friends and family don't necessarily talk about politics all that much. But how would you advise someone to go about navigating this hellscape of discourse?
Well, like I said earlier on, I strongly suggest diversifying your following, diversify who you look at on social media, what news sources you follow. And it doesn't have to be quote unquote unbiased news sources. They're very, very few and far between if they even exist. So please go to a Jewish newspaper, go to an Israeli newspaper, go to I-24 News that's based in Tel Aviv, and go to the Gray Zone, which is an anti-war newspaper. Go to CNN, go to Fox, go to, people on both sides.
BBC, Al Jazeera.
Yeah, Al Jazeera. There are several, there's even several independent journalists on the ground in both Israel and Gaza that I'm following. I follow Cassie Dillon, who is a American Jewish convert who is on the ground right now in Israel.
I like her a lot. I would highly recommend
I do
her
personally
coverage,
like her, and I don't even like a lot of her opinions, but I do personally like her, so I follow her, and I think that she's at least an honest person, so I take her reporting as it is. There's also I follow Cassandra McDonald. I know she's controversial, but she reposts a lot of stuff from, I think his name is Motaz or Moaz. I'm definitely pronouncing it wrong, but there's a guy on the ground in Palestine who's also providing, I think, really great reporting. So there's people on both sides of the issue that I think you should, it just is very helpful to follow and make up your own mind and stay away from the ideologues. I know I brought up Ben Shapiro earlier. Ben Shapiro has had the same opinion on this issue for probably his entire life, at least for his entire public life. You're not going to, if you want your mind changed by Ben Shapiro, go ahead, but he's not going to say anything that's unbiased. So it's just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, I would agree with diversifying your information. And like I said earlier, specific questions is a good way to really dig into information. So that you're not reading one person's account, you're like kind of seeing how several people are addressing the same topic.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go about it too. But most importantly, don't let people bully you into having an opinion or forming an opinion before you're ready. And don't let yourself get into such an echo chamber where to the point where you start feeling like the other side they're not human. That's when you know you've gone off the deep end.
To some people, that makes them feel so enlightened. Like, yes, I cracked the code. About how the Holocaust never happened and these people are just evil pigs. Or I cracked the code about how everybody hates Palestinians. And that's why Gaza, it's like there's one set of people who are like, what are you talking about? Gaza's an open air prison. It's actually paradise. And the other side of the people are like, if it's not an open air prison, it should be because those people are animals. Like, it's like, holy crap. Can we just take a step back?
I mean, but they can't. Also there's like a million opinions in between, just so you guys know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, the history of it is really interesting and important to study in order to understand context for things, because this is not something you can just move through with political slogans. That's not going to help you. It's just not going to help you, babe. Like you're going to suffer if you just move through it with political slogans. Because a lot of these people, it's like telephone. They don't know what they're talking about. They're just repeating things. So that's not what you should do. Form your own opinion. Don't let people bully you. Yeah. And if you have a prayer life, not that this is a religious podcast, but if you have a prayer life, it's good to pray for other people. And so pray for, the innocent people overseas and even here at home who are feeling really afraid and scared and destabilized. Pray for the people who are losing homes, are losing their children, the people that are getting that have to go into military or have to go fight. Like, all of these people need your prayers if you have a prayer life. If you don't, send the good vibes or something. And remember to maintain your humanity. Very important. Very important.
I agree. Those are all great final thoughts. As for mine, I would say, remember that this conflict did not start on October 7th, 2023. It started generations before this. It arguably may have even started before 1948 because religious conflict between Jews and Christians and Muslims has gone on since all three of those religions existed, which is thousands of years ago. So keep that in mind. I would
it's thousands of years of history.
In terms of praying for people, and I don't even consider myself a very particularly religious person, but I think I do believe in the power of prayer, or at least I try to, so that's why I pray. And on the day that this happened, the horrible videos came out, like that I don't even really want to repeat, but there was a certain video that really struck with me of a woman who has now been confirmed deceased. She was attending the music festival and she was mercilessly displayed in the back of this truck, kidnapped by Hamas, and it was her body. And I prayed for her because I just, it's one of those things where it's like, of course you want her to be alive, but do you want her to be alive to be done whatever to by Hamas? Yeah. So I prayed for her soul. And then I did pray for Justin Amash's family because he said it was several members. I believe it was his dad's first cousins and their in-laws and families and things like that. Yeah. And locally, a few minutes away from where I live back in Maryland, this was really sad. Same high school graduating class as me. This guy, his name was Omer Balva, a 22-year-old native of Rockville, Maryland, who was back home. He was visiting Maryland from his home in Israel on a vacation, and Hamas stormed Israel and kidnapped hundreds and killed, I think, 1,500 people. He's in the IDF reserves, 22-year-old, high school class of 2019, same as me, gets called up. His first day out there, he gets killed in a blast in Hamas. And he was just like some random Jewish American kid who was in the IDF reserves, gets called up. And it was a very big thing locally because he was gathering supplies, like helmets and gloves and things like that to take to IDF soldiers because they were running low. And like literally his first day out there, he gets blown up. So I would just like to basically keep that Omer in my prayers as well, because that was sad to hear as a local.
Thank you for telling stories of actual people. I think that's probably what's being missed, Right. Like, it's not just a number, like it's genuine people who had families and had lives that they wanted to live. And they can't now because of this conflict. So yeah. I'm sorry this was a very heavy episode, you guys. I was very nervous to film it because it's so hard to navigate. Hopefully we did an okay job. But yeah, get deep in the comments. Tell us how you're feeling. Are you doing okay?
I will read the comments. I'm going to put on my hazmat suit before I go in there, but I will read the comments. And if you
not the hazmat,
it's going on. It's radioactive. I just feel like we're gonna get spammed. But I hope there is good discourse in there, and we do welcome opinions from a range of different sides. Because I mean, we talked about it like there's only two sides, but it's much more complicated than that. And I think people on both of the major sides have very differing opinions on the solution, on how to go about it. So we open up the comments for you guys, and hopefully there's some productive conversation.
Let's see. If the comments are turned off, you know what happened.
Y'all know what happened.
Y'all know what happened. You already know. Send us well wishes if the comments are turned off.
Free speech does not protect y'all from our YouTube comment sections. So just be nice.
All right. Well, thanks so much, you guys. Hope you guys have an amazing week. Yeah, let's try to make the world a better place little by little every single day through our tiny actions.